Hello Internet and welcome to Historical Headline for the 7th of January. The Prince of Denmark murders his cousin. No, not Hamlet. Rather, we are all the way back in 1131 AD, where the Danish Prince Magnus of Sweden, also known as he claimed the kingdom of Sweden to his hand at one point without too much luck, decided to try to avoid a civil war in his kingdom after his father's death by murdering his cousin Canute. Since this links directly back to the video I did about the blood feast of Roskilde at one point, I'm sure the more faithful of my viewers and the more perceptive of the rest of you will realize this did not go perhaps quite as well as he would have preferred. But to talk you through this entire situation, I send you now to our new time-traveling correspondent for specific Viking affairs, Torkill the Fat. Torkill.
Okay, as most of you will remember, this all began with the current king's father. Of course, he had 17 children, and all of them felt that they were just the guy for the throne. And in fact, 6 of them basically managed it. Of course, those 6 also had children who also wanted to be just the guy to sit on the throne, so there was quite a bit of musical chairs going on there for a while regarding who was to call himself King of Denmark. In the end, though, it fell to Niels, the youngest son of the original guy, the one with all the kids there, to actually take the throne and hold it for quite a while. In fact, he has now been king for 30 years, and he has done a pretty decent job of maintaining stability for the country, if not necessarily a lot of luck expanding our power outwards as it used to be back in the day when we had all of England as well. But I suppose the Viking era is mostly gone, which is why I am now doing time-traveling reportant instead of raping and pillaging in England. However, even so, King Nielsted had a couple of nephews left who perhaps also thought that they were the right guy to be king of Denmark, and even though he outlived most of them, there was still at least one fellow left, the Duke of Southern Jutland, Canute, the son of the previous king Erik, and he had made himself incredibly popular in the populace by creating peace and stability on the southern border, which had otherwise been under almost constant attack from the Holy Roman Empire for the last 100 or so years. In fact, he had also made himself very popular with the populace by being a good governor, even-handed and fairly generous with his wealth, and making sure there were no famines in his area. So it seems that possibly the king and his son Magnus decided that, yeah, they might have been a bit suspicious about this fellow and his desire to maybe take the throne from them. It must after all be remembered that Denmark is still an elective monarchy, so even though you are the son of the king, it doesn't mean you are secure in your place on the throne. If enough of the Grand Magnates and the people decided that Canute would be a better candidate, they would have elected him over Magnus when Magnus' father died. Now there is no immediate evidence that Canute was interested in this, and Magnus was absolutely popular in his own right, a big, strong, handsome, strapping lad who was a good warrior and a fine, decent administrator. He would have had a strong claim on the title, but it seems that he simply didn't trust that Canute would perhaps not try for a civil war before the end of King Niels' life. So instead he lured his cousin to a Christmas party at Haraldsted on Sealand, lured him out into the forest so they could have a little conversation, and stabbed him repeatedly with a sharp object until Canute fell down and stopped breathing. Fortunately, we have been able to find Magnus here before he returned to the royal hall, and I have decided to ask him a few questions about what he expects from the future following this rather hands-on decision to end any threat to his current position in the monarchical hierarchy. So, Prince Magnus, your father's most powerful and popular magnate and nobleman, and you stuck a spear in him about 5 times. Do you truly think this was actually that brilliant of an idea?
Yes, I do. This was a thing that had to be done.
there is little doubt that Canute was racked by ambition and would have in fact tried to kill me or my father, or for that matter, would have attempted to take the throne the second my father, may he live for a very long time, one day decided to go to God. You were there, Torquil. You saw the civil wars that followed my grandfather's death. You saw how all of my uncles squabbled for possession of the throne. You saw how they weakened our country, let us into famine and despair and illness and sickness until my father took the throne and brought us back stability. And this is what we would have gone back to had I not in fact removed the warmonger Canute from his position amongst the living. Right, Magnus, and I don't necessarily begrudge you the possibility of removing people who are threatening your position on the throne, but you do realize that Canute has brothers, right? Brothers who might not be particularly fond of the way you decided that the Christmas gift their brother should have was a spear in the bladder. Don't you think some of them might actually wish to at one point give you back the same kind of favor that you gave to their big bro? Canute made his decision, and I made mine, and we in the end discovered that God was with me and not with him. His brothers are not nearly up to his standard, and I believe that this event will have left Denmark with stability and allowed me to bring it forward into a glorious future. Now, if you'll excuse me, I really must go home and break the news to my father. Well, I suppose you have to give Prince Magnus that his solution at least has the charming quality of directness, no skulking about for him. One can only hope that he has not miscalculated and he will in fact be allowed to use his significant talents to lead Denmark into a new glorious golden age. Back to the studio.
Thank you, Torquil. And here I was thinking that Vikings did not in fact wear horns on their helmet. Anyway, things did of course not go nearly the way that Magnus had intended. He was in fact himself, as mentioned, rather popular in the population. He was young, strapping, good-looking, strong, good warrior. He was fighting, he had luck in war, he had all the good things. It was just that Canute was just that one smidgen generally more liked than him. And while he is right that Canute's brothers were not nearly up to his standards, they were up to enough standard to start a civil war, precisely the civil war that Niels and Magnus had tried to avoid. Whether or not Niels had been in on the murder plans in the first place or not, nobody knows that for certain, but in the end he stood by and protected his son from any kind of retribution, which of course then led to precisely the civil war that he wanted to try to avoid. Here we can perhaps learn that using violence to solve internal problems with a popular leader usually don't go quite the way you would want to. At any rate, 3 years the various factions fought each other until at the Battle of Fordevik in 1134, Niels and Magnus was defeated in battle by Canute's brother Erik. Magnus was killed and Niels tried to escape to the old trading city of Hedeby near Slesvig in what is today northern Germany. Some people might say that was a really bad decision, since that was exactly the town where Canute himself had had his court back in the day, and it didn't take long for the burghers of that town to get on to Niels' ship and murderize the shit out of him. This of course led to another round of civil wars, and again I advise you to go watch my older video about the Blood Feast of Roskilde, where I describe the events up until peace was finally restored under a new royal line by Canute's son Valdemar in 1157, almost 25 years after his father's murder. But anyway, I hope this has been of interest to you. I shall be back tomorrow with another historical headline. Until then, I have been the Sage, and I wish you all a very happy day.